Hello, Jacob here, and I'm going to be doing an explanation of how you can do a graphic in Adobe Illustrator based on a picture. And so I'm basically going to take you step by step through the process. So first, I'm importing a picture into Illustrator, and here it is. We've got a picture of Frank Ocean wearing like a motorcycle helmet and stuff. And so I'm gonna first resize this so that it fits into the artboard, which is that white area on the screen. And so I'm just holding shift and then dragging it out. Alright, and now I've gotten the pen tool, which you can access either on the bar over to the left or by hitting P. And I'm just tracing each object one by one. You notice that I'm skipping some details. A lot of times there will be details of pictures that aren't necessary for like to translate the overall message of the graphic or picture. So if it's easier to skip it, like it was in the case of that weird camera thing, I usually would do that. What I did just there was switch it from a fill to an outline on the shape that I'm creating. And I just did that because I find it easier to work with, like to just see what I'm like tracing over when I have like a little outline for it. And so here I am messing up again, we all make mistakes. We're all human. The nice thing about when you have another like thing that's going to overlap whatever shape you're making is that it doesn't really matter what you do as far as that side goes. I'll explain that a little bit further later if you didn't quite get what I mean, but I just finished the motorcycle helmet, and so I'm about to start on the visor. So the visor's gonna cover up that edge of the, what the hell, what am I doing? So anyway, the visor covers the edge of that one part of the helmet, so it didn't really matter where I put the line that went over there. His neck's real easy because it's basically just those two sides. And right there I'm debating whether or not I should do the t-shirt, and I decide, nah, t-shirt doesn't matter. Sometimes you're gonna have objects that go in front of your thing, so I'm trying to do his shoulder, but there's this string in the way, so you just kind of basically have to assume, just the general shape that you would imagine would take up, whatever is being overlapped. Anytime you make a mistake, you're just going to want to hit Control Z, real quick to just fix that. It can be pretty annoying when you have to scroll a lot because you're too zoomed in, but it's all about finding a happy medium and just whatever works for you best, personally. I like to be pretty zoomed in because it makes, my lines a little bit smoother, because I'm able to see a greater detail. An idea that I flirt with here is including a curve, which you get by, rather than just clicking to add a point, you do a, you click and drag, and then, you just try to get a curve that matches the whatever you're outlining. But then there are no curves anywhere else in the illustration, so I figured it would be it could just be off-putting, so I just decided not to do that. So right here I've got two objects that are touching, and unfortunately if you click, you can't start out a path overlapping an anchor point that you already had set, but you can have 2 overlapping anchor points. Hypothetically, it shouldn't matter what happens off the artboard, because I don't believe that it saves, I don't believe that that's part of the final image that you export. But, ultimately, it falls, the burden of responsibility falls on whoever is doing the layout for your page to, cut it off in a straight line. Unless, of course, you are doing a graphic that includes, like, the person's shoes or some logical way. I decided to do his entire hand as one, one, like, blob. It would be difficult in that situation to do his fingers individually, but I'm sure that there's a way you could do it with shading. And so what I'm doing now is I'm finding colors for everything. The helmet, a little bit interesting, it's got a pattern on it, and of course I messed up. You have to hit V or your normal selection tool to find to be able to do this, and then I or the eyedropper tool to pick a color. Pull colors are usually what I use, but if you have a color that fits the color scheme of the book or something, then you can change it out. It doesn't matter very much. As far as things that so here you'd see me pull the brown from his neck to use on his left hand, because I think in a photograph, shading will affect the things. Like, skin tone is relatively uniform across someone's body, but lighting in photographs may not make it look that way. So usually if I'm doing a person, I'll pull their skin tone and I'll use it for their entire body, unless of course they have their arms crossed or something, and then you would have to use a different color for their arms. The final step of doing this whole shebang is just organizing the layers in a logical fashion. So even though I already had my layers on the sidebar, I guess I forgot about that. So I'm basically just rearranging the layers so that what's supposed to cover stuff ends up covering other stuff. And then you can use both the layers menu and what I used before, the arrange tool, but the layers just helps me visualize it a little bit better. I used Shift to select multiple things when I wanted to move them as one unit. That's pretty universal across Adobe programs. So now I've completely stopped using the original image as a guide, but there's still some things that I'm going to go back and do. For example, that white space that you can see, between the hand and the hoodie's sleeve, that's, doesn't look particularly good. So I have to use the black arrow to select the path, and then the white arrow to select individual anchor points, and then you click and drag that to move them. And so with that, I completed my graphic. And so now I'm just gonna save it. You should save them as both Illustrator, which I'm about to do. And all the default Illustrator settings are fine for saving the Illustrator file. That's important because well, it's important. I'll just leave it at that. And then also exporting as a PNG is good, because that, that's just a traditional image format. It can be easier to work with in InDesign than importing an Illustrator file directly into InDesign can be. And that is all, and I hope you guys found this informative.